The next story is about my man TL. Y'all know who TL is, right? Shout out to my man TL. TL, Tory Lanez, finally did a interview. You know, he looking good for a guy that got stabbed up 17 times. Um, before I get into this, I gotta do my legal thing. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by the copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit educational and personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Right? So I'm using this video in fair use, for, of course, criticizing, comment, as well as news reporting, teaching, and research in the Tory Lanez versus Megan Thee Stallion case. So let's take a look at this, and then I will come back and comment on on this interview.
Tonight, rapper Tory Lanez breaking his silence in his first ever broadcast interview from behind bars since being found guilty of shooting Grammy winner Megan Thee Stallion in the foot outside a party in 2020.
I've never been violent towards a woman. I would never hit a woman, let alone shoot a woman.
Lanez, whose real name is Daystar Peterson, spoke to NBC News from California Men's Colony, a prison where he's 3 years into a 10-year sentence after being found guilty on 3 felony counts, including assault with a semi-automatic firearm.
There is definitely a very big misconception about me that seems to the public as I'm this monster. And I feel like I was catapulted into this poster child for the unprotection of Black women. And it's just so unlike me. And I've never really had a chance to express that. But you can look at my criminal record. I don't have one. I never had one. And I feel like, that connotation that I would do anything of this monstrous proportion is just, it's completely incorrect and it's wrong.
Lanez declined to testify during his 2022 trial. Do you regret not taking the stand?
I think if I would have taken the stand, the verdict would have definitely been very different.
The rapper's legal team filed an appeal, which was denied in November. But his team is continuing to fight, with plans to file multiple appeals next week, this time with the California Supreme Court, in one claiming newly discovered evidence that they weren't provided during Lanez's 2022 trial, including hundreds of pages of medical records for Megan Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, which they allege raise questions about the fragments removed from her foot after surgery. His team argues that the fragments were not provided ahead of trial and that this was a violation of due process.
And we didn't have that chance. Or perhaps we could have questioned the doctors differently when they were on stand to impeach them, because it does look suspicious.
But in the appeal denied in November, the court did address the fragments, ruling that the surgeon's testimony.
Hold on, let's read this. The surgeon told Pete was placed under general anesthesia for the surgery. The surgeon described in details the steps a team of 3 surgeons took to remove questionable tissue and the metal fragments, flush the areas, and close the wound with suturers. I don't know what that is. Pete was admitted to the hospital after the surgery. This testimony was more than sufficient to support the jury's finding that Peterson personally inflicted great bodily injury on Pete. I need to move this. It does not require a victim to have suffered permanent, prolonged, or protracted disfigurement, impairment, or loss of bodily function. I can't see the other things. The stuff is covered up. All right. I just wanted to see what that was. All right, let me continue.
Testimony was, quote, more than sufficient to prove great bodily injury on Pete. Proving something like this on appeal is tough.
This is a really, really difficult appellate argument for defendants to prove because they have to show if the evidence actually came into court, the jury would have found differently. It's an uphill battle, and it's something that often torpedoes any defense appellate argument.
The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office and representatives for Megan Thee Stallion have not responded to NBC News' request for comment.
I believe not only that I was wrongfully convicted, but the amount of new evidence that has emerged since that trial, I think, has been overwhelming.
What has life been like in prison for the last couple of years?
Truthfully, I've done my best to keep my head above water, but mentally, I've gone through trauma that I sometimes even struggle with because I never imagined myself dealing with things that I would have to deal with. I've been stabbed 17 times. I almost lost my life.
If you could say something to Megan Thee Stallion today, what would it be?
I think that I wouldn't say something directly to her. I would like that moment to happen in person. We've both gone through a lot. There's this connotation that, like, I share this hatred for her, but I don't. I genuinely passed that. I'm at a place of healing in my life. I'm at a place of taking accountability for the things that I did wrong. And when I talk about my case, I don't want it to be taken as me coming at her, because it's not that. I'm just asking for somebody in the system to look at my case and look at the evidence and ask if this was fair.
And with
Shout out to Tory Lanez. Shout out to my man, Sunstar, his and the whole Peterson family. Well, as we know, he has been denied the last appeal, but it don't stop there. You can keep going and keep going. And now that he's going to appeal to the Supreme Court, we'll see what happens. But as you can see, he still maintains his innocence as far as, you know, he didn't shoot her. I think people going to take what he said about accepting his responsibility, his wrong in this, as some type of admission of guilt. And once again, I think his him admitting his wrong in it, was what he said to spark the argument. Revealing that him and Kelsey was him and Megan was messing around behind Kelsey back, which sparked that whole argument allegedly. I believe that that's what he's referring to when he's speaking on, his part in this, or what he feels he was guilty of. I don't think he's saying that his part in it is meaning as, the shooting. But, you know, this is the thing I tell people, like, people that make false allegations against you out of anger, out of hurt, out of heartbreak, out of revenge and stuff, in a temporary moment, and do that to try to, send you to jail. Like jail is a place where, a person can send you to jail for child support, and you go to jail and child support, and you could be Tory in jail for being late on child support payments, and your baby mother want to send you to jail for child support, and you could be like Tory and end up getting, excuse me, stabbed up 17 times, and you not even in there for something uh or violent crime. You know what I'm saying? Like you could be in jail for uh DUI and something can happen to you. So, jail is a very dangerous place. And a lot of women, you know, and I'm not speaking about Megan, I'm just saying in general, a lot of women use jail as a revenge tactic. And a lot of sucker butt dudes do that too. You know what I'm saying? So I just hope that, the dude get a chance at an appeal, you know, where, he could get his freedom, right? But the one thing I say about Tory and black culture, and is the reason why I believe Tory's in there, him not testifying about what happened because he didn't want to be looked at as a snitch allegedly and tell the truth caused him to get all this time. You know what I'm saying? You know, I honestly believe he didn't testify because he knew it wasn't true, and but he didn't want to sit there and tell on allegedly didn't want to tell on Kelsey, who I feel allegedly is the one that may have pulled the trigger, right? Because of his emotions for her and Megan, and being that he blew up the spot to cause that argument, I feel like he didn't want to testify and tell on them because he felt probably, he would be exonerated and would get out without having to incriminate nobody else. But that goes back to that dumbass black culture. Yo, you's a snitch. You snitching. This, that, and the other. And this man could have died in jail. 17 stabs. Like if one of them would have went a little left, a little right, a little up, a little down, he might not have been that lucky. You know what I'm saying? And by the grace of God, he still got his life. But I'm sure he's traumatized by that event, and as well as being traumatized by being convicted of something that he allegedly didn't do. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes when you follow this culture of you a snitch if you tell or if you testify, that could be the detriment of your own goddamn freedom. That could be your own goddamn life because you trying to live by this dumbass code that was created by a bunch of weak ass niggas in the streets or the mafia or wherever it originated at for people that didn't want to own up to their own crimes. So they will let another person go to jail for them, you know, uh, and then call them a rat or a snitch if they tell the truth to free themselves of something that they didn't do and protect the criminal that did it. That's just like it's as you get older and you look back at it, and then I look at back at all the guys that I know that went to jail for stuff that they didn't do, and they felt like they was being honorable and taking the rap for somebody else to be looked at as a stand-up dude or looked at as a real N-word, right? They done missed out on a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. There's some dudes in jail for life right now that got this stripe on their chest, on their arm, that they a real nigga because they didn't tell and they didn't do nothing. But they didn't want to be looked at or carry this tag of being called a rat or being called a snitch or betrayer or whatever, and will allow another person, a criminal, a killer, a thief, or whatever crime it may be, to walk them out here free while they go in jail with them with this badge of honor of keeping it real. It's the stupidest thing ever in the black culture. You know what I'm saying? That we adopted this thing in the black culture that it's honorable for a nigga to be in the car with a bunch of niggas and the police grab the wrong person and let them go to jail for it. And you a real nigga because you went to jail and you didn't tell. Like you give up your freedom because you don't want to look like a snitch. And in Tory Lanez case, he put these women before his kids. He put these women before his father, before his mother, his siblings, if he have any. Just to wear this badge of honor. So when he come out of jail, niggas gonna say, yo, you didn't tell, you's a real nigga. Da 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 da. While Megan goes and move on with her life. Kelsey goes and move on with her life. And like I can understand his emotion for the women and not testifying because he didn't want to see them get in trouble. But at what point do you put your family first? Do you put your son first? Right? So I mean that's all I really gotta say in regards to that. But I hope that this appeal works out in his favor. Um, I've seen women lie, you know, about various different things, and they don't even care because most women don't experience jail and know what jail is like. They just know it is a way to punish a brother or a man or a father or a brother or a cousin, you know. And I mean, it's sad, man. I just pray for that brother. And I hope that he learned from this because, just like that news reporter asked him, had you testified, do you think it would have been a different outcome? And now, if it was a fifth, we all be drunk, right? And I know in hindsight, he thinks about that. If not every day, at least once a week, that he should have testified and just told the truth. Prayers up for the brother Tory Lanez, though. All right.